which is being brought to you here on WECT.com, was also brought to you in part by the League of Women Voters of the Lower Cape Fear, who have helped us tremendously in putting this together, and as well as the town of Oak Island, our gracious hosts here this evening in this wonderful facility. And as you'll see as we go along here, we have a packed house here to listen to these candidates for mayor and for town council, let folks know where they stand. What we are going to do is, a drawing was held. We will have an opening statement from each candidate, 2 minutes in length, up to 2 minutes. And then we will have questions which were sent in by many of the residents, both current and out-of-town residents from Oak Island. Many of them have sent them in here via email, and we will give those questions to the candidates. We will begin with the 3 candidates who are running for mayor, take a break right around 7 o'clock, then bring the 3 candidates up who are running for 2 seats on the town council. As we said, there was a drawing before we got started here this evening as to how the order of the opening and closing statements would go. So first, for an opening statement of no more than 2 minutes in length, we bring up to the podium the candidate for mayor in Oak Island, Betty Wallace. Ms. Wallace, please to the stage.
Thank you, John. Just like at the Senior Center, I get to go first again. My name is Betty Wallace. I'm the current mayor of Oak Island, and I'm running for re-election. I ran for the first time in 2009 and was elected, and since then, I think I have been the most accessible and the most communicative mayor that we've ever had. On my business card as mayor is my home telephone number, my cell phone, and my email address. I don't want you to have to worry about calling me in the office from 8 to 4:30. You can call me at Saturday night about the lab that's in your front yard. You can call me on Sunday morning about the baby squirrel that your cat brought into your house. Call me anytime you please. One of my first goals, and we realized that when our new town clerk took her position in July of 2010, was to have the entire council packet online on our website before you could get the agenda. And with her expertise with computers, we were able to set it up now so that you can see with a link on each one all of the council packet. I have attended since 2010 every single event in town that I possibly could that fit into my schedule, and it's not was from duty. It was because I love all of the events that we hold in the town of Oak Island. My favorites, the Turtle Triathlon, our new Living Shoreline project. We've got a great community, and there is lots to do here, and I wanted to be at all of them. I've attended since January of 2010 meetings monthly with the Southeast Brunswick mayors. We talk about issues that affect Oak Island. We have sent many resolutions and lots of information to our respective boards about the flood insurance increase, about the Wilmington MPO, your homeowner's insurance increase, the county's proposal for the fire tax, their initial proposal in 2010 for the recycling. And we've asked our councils to approve those or disapprove them. Thank you for your time and appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Betty Wallace. Next, for an opening statement of no more than 2 minutes in length, we will turn to mayoral candidate Mr. Charles Warren. Mr. Warren.
Good evening. I want to thank, first of all, the League of the Women's for putting on this forum for the candidates. And also, I would like to thank the moderator, John Evans, for his time and coming out to bring forth this great forum. My name is Charles Warren. I've lived in Oak Island since 1999. I was here when the town was first chartered. So I am a long-time resident, at least for Oak Island. I was a county commissioner, and some things that I had brought forth as a county commissioner, the number one goal of mine was to get a veteran clinic here in Brunswick County. So as I work diligently with the legislators and with the VA from the Capitol down in Washington, who came forth to help us to bring forth this VA clinic. Initially, they said we would not get it. Then we finally got the VA clinic here for the vets. I have also been involved with working with the Southeastern Mental Health. I worked with the tax task force. We had a veterans task force also that was put together to help bring in that veteran clinic. I have, Oak Island is my home now, you know, my second home since I left here. And it's time for Oak Island, basically, you know, for the people here to become progressive, you know, because this is a growing town and a lot of people are basically moving here. And we're having all types of people, all nationalities. So we all deserve a chance. So I want to thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Next, for his opening statement this evening, we will go to mayoral candidate Scott Coe. Mr. Coe.
Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum and for Mr. Evans. Community involvement is a key to a successful and healthy town. My college degree is in business, and my line of work is water and sewer systems. I've lived in Oak Island for over 10 years. I'm married with 3 children. My decision to run for mayor is my feeling that the voice and opinion of the residents is not being heard. The current administration seems to ignore what the majority of residents want. Some work has been done, but our town is not in the great shape our current leaders seem to think it is. We cannot continue to spend taxpayers' money with no regard to debt that increases each year. The residents of Oak Island have had to live within a budget, and the town should do the same. The current administration is quick to write a check without making certain that there is no alternative solution. I'm here tonight to let our current leaders know that we, the residents of Oak Island, have had enough and it must stop. We've had enough of physical irresponsibility, enough of being asked for more money while receiving less. We've had enough of our unresponsive leadership. Our current leaders have had 4 years to get things done, and it's still a mess. The job of being the voice of our residents is one in which I'd be honored to have. If you put your trust in me, I will not let you down. Oak Island is a great town, and its residents deserve the best. Thank you.
Mr. Coe, thank you. And if you'll stay right there, I'm going to ask you for the first response to the first question, sir. Question number 1, what affordable path should the town of Oak Island take for beach restoration?
Well, I know that they were working to have the town changed to be an engineered beach, which that would allow us to have the money from the government. I know that could you read the question one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure. What affordable path should the town of Oak Island take for beach restoration?
As far as trying to re-nurse the beach and have the money to be able to do so, it needs to come from the town, but it would be nice to also have some federal help in that.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wallace, I ask you for the next response to this question, ma'am. What affordable path should the town of Oak Island take for beach restoration?
Keywords in that question, affordable path. I wish we had one. We all know that there's been a total dry up of federal funds. Our Corps of Engineers were at the point in the general reevaluation report of almost getting to the point of permitting, and they shelved our project because of the dry up of the federal funds. In this last council meeting, special meeting of October the 10th, the Oak Island Town Council agreed to engage the services of an engineer to do a feasibility study of our beach to see if it would be feasible for us to enter into an engineered beach project. Calculations show that it would cost no more than and probably less than what our share would have been in a federally funded project. Watch that. It'll take them a while to get that report together, and then we'll know whether it's feasible for us to do our own engineered beach. I very much look forward to seeing the results of that report.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Mr. Warren, your response to the same question, sir. What affordable path should the town of Oak Island take for beach restoration?
My recommendation would be that we go for some federal grants. I just know that she keeps saying that the grants have dried up, but there is still federal money available where we can go and get the Corps of Engineers to assist with reflourishing the beaches. So that would be my recommendation. just
Thank you,
get.
sir. Mr. Warren, I'm going to ask you to stay at the podium. I'm going to have you respond first to the next question if I can. The second question, what efforts do you plan to take to avoid the massive projected increase of flood insurance costs for property owners in Oak Island?
Well, that has to come basically from the legislators. I think that, you know, as the mayor of the town council, I think that there's very little that we can do as far as regulating the flood insurance prices. I just think that the insurance commissioners and the legislators are the one that basically control that. So we wouldn't have very much to do with that.
Thank you,
But
sir.
if I could, I would definitely, because the flood insurance and the prices of insurance affected me also. So, you know, they're very high. So I would definitely do what I could. But thanks.
Ms. Wallace, I ask you to respond to the same question, ma'am. What efforts do you plan to take to help avoid the massive projected increase of flood insurance costs for property owners in Oak Island?
I've already started those efforts. Last October, November, the Southeast Brunswick mayors found out about the information about the proposed. It's as much an increase in flood insurance programs as it is an increase on those that built their homes to specs years ago that don't meet current code. They're going to be penalized. We sent forward resolutions to our respective boards in opposition to this program of increasing these flood insurance rates on people that built to specifications years ago, built a 14-foot freeboard. Now they're expected to pay for a 17-foot freeboard. We just got an email from Congressman McIntyre, and he has taken up the charge. The mayor's got an individual email from his representative, and I'm like, where were you last year? But we're going to gain together and see if we can't do something about that. The insurance rates became effective as of July 1st of 2013. The major thing is get that back to where people that don't meet current code are no longer penalized.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Coe, I ask for your response. What efforts do you plan to take to help avoid the massive projected increase of flood insurance costs for property owners on Oak Island?
Well, like Mr. Warren was saying, I know that a lot of that comes from the state legislature. And I don't agree, you know, I agree with Mayor Wallace where you should not be penalized if you don't meet code now as it is. But as far as the flood insurance, I think it's incredibly high and has a lot to do with where the flood zone and where your actual house is. I wish that there was something that the town council could do to relieve some of that from people, but I feel that it's going to be something that's going to be handed down through our state legislators.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wallace, I'm going to ask you to respond first to the next question, ma'am, if I can. And I'm going to set it up just a little bit for you. As I read the questions that were submitted to the forum, I really saw a pattern of homeowners, both local and absentee, who are upset about the quality of some of the work done on town projects. From the sewer project that we've done many stories on, to several road projects, especially mentioning around East Dolphin Drive. So the question I'm asking, would you support any new ordinances that mandate tougher rules or regulations or oversight on this type of work that's paid for by taxpayers?
I would support any rules that would not take away the authority of your elected officials, your town council, in hiring these contractors and in approving the bids for them. I would very much support any major projects that we have. I would love to have it so that it was in our rules of procedure or in our ordinances that any project beyond a certain scope would require a project manager. I sincerely believe that with our wastewater project, there were a lot of issues that came through not having an engineer supervisor on the entire project. I have found since I took office as mayor that there were a lot of change orders. There was a lot of changes on the engineer drawings that were issued verbally with no written change order, no approved change order. That was the major issue on a lot of the cost overruns.
Mr. Coe, ask you to respond, sir. Would you support any new ordinance mandating tougher rules or regulations or oversight on any project work that's paid for by taxpayers?
I would. I think that the roads the situation that we're in when they put the sewer laterals in. I don't know how that was, the oversight for that job was terrible. I mean, they're in a bad shape. I don't know if it was an inspection process that failed or who finally signed off on that work. But if there was, I would like to keep it as town controlled, but we may have to seek the expertise that would come from the state for these jobs. They do a lot of paving jobs. Some of them that I've seen are not as, or is about the same that we have, but I feel that that is something that could be looked at, but I would really like the final word to come from the town of Oak Island.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warren, your response, sir. Would you support any new ordinance mandating tougher rules or regulations or oversight on any project work that's paid for by taxpayers?
Yes, I would. I would basically require the contractors to post a bond that in case if the work was not completed satisfactory, that the city councilman could pull the bond, and basically that would make up for the difference where it would not cost the taxpayers any extra money. But I think probably even with the past water and sewer, I don't know where they had a bond or not, but I know that the burden of the expenses fell back on the homeowners, and that is absolutely ridiculous, because if they'd had a bond, then the bond would have picked up where the contractor left off. And as far as suing and to try to recoup this money from the contractor or to get the work done, they in turn, the engineer was basically responsible for that in the first place. So he should have been the one that should have been keeping up with what the problems were.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warren, I'm going to ask you to stay there and respond first to the next question, sir. Seems to be easier that way, just to have you stay there.
Okay.
I'd like you, sir, name one specific action that you plan to sponsor if elected that would set you apart from the current office holder you're challenging.
Well, one specific action is the one that I just mentioned about having the contractors come in and place the bond. When you come in with the bid, they will put up a bond to cover that the amount of money that the bid has been awarded. So that basically, when the job is not completed, then if they don't complete it, you can pull the bond. And I know that's the way the county have operated when I was there. Any bids that came in, they had to put up a bond that was able to make sure that the job was completed. If it wasn't, then the county would pull the bond. And so that would be one thing I would work on.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Coe, I'd like you to respond to the same question and name, if you can, one specific action you plan to sponsor if elected that would set you apart from the office holder you're challenging.
Well, I think, in my opinion, there's a lot of expertise in our town, in our residents of our town. I think a lot of these decisions and the projects that could be worked upon could be through volunteers with our town. There are a lot of really intelligent people that really want to help, and it seems that they don't feel as welcome to come forward. And I would really promote that as much as possible to be able to have that help and to tap into our resource of our residents of our town.
Mr. Coe, thank you. Ms. Wallace, I ask you, ma'am, to name one specific action you plan to sponsor that would set you apart from those who are challenging you for your office.
I don't know if it's one action that you could sponsor, but one thing I want to do, I want to see this wastewater project through to its completion. You know, we haven't had that thing certified yet. I want to use my knowledge of it to continue to help the council, the town manager, the people in town understand those road cut-throughs. We're on the very edge, and those contractors were bonded. But unless you notify them that you weren't satisfied with their work, they're not required to make good on their work. We're on the very edge of notifying some of those contractors of any, if any, of their work that we are dissatisfied with. And I think the people in the town of Oak Island are going to be satisfied that a lot of these issues you've been facing for years are finally going to come to a conclusion and a resolution. I want to see that through. We've got 25th Place West, we got these street cut-throughs, we got the odors coming from Middleton Lift Station, we got vacuum stations.
Thank
That's
you,
it.
ma'am. Mr. Coe, I'm going to ask you to respond first to the next question. After 4 drowning victims died along Brunswick County beaches in 2013, what are your thoughts on the beach safety measures taken on Oak Island and throughout the county? Do you think there should be more safety measures taken on the beaches?
Absolutely. I think education is the key to that. I know that some of the beaches around our area do have lifeguards. That area has been floated, but our budget constraints that we're under with the debt that we have, I don't know that that would really be an option. I think if we could educate people a little more, some of the programs we have, like for the sea turtles and all the way that they educate people about the nests that are there is a good thing, and maybe we could come up with something for visitors that could be included in vacation packets and things when people come to visit. There are certain things you should and should not do. We, as residents, know there are, but I think we could communicate that a lot better because it's such a tragedy when someone comes to a vacation and loses their life.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warren, what are your thoughts on beach safety measures taken on Oak Island and throughout the county after the 4 drowning victims we've had in 2013? Should there be more safety measures taken?
Well, I think that it's a tragedy when we do lose a life. And I also feel basically that we should have some form of, I wouldn't say lifeguards because the beach is just so long. It would be kind of difficult for a lifeguard to monitor the whole beach. But I would say that we should have either some form of notification, some flags or some that gives you different colors, letting you know when the rip tide is high so that people would not go in. But that would need to, we would also need to educate the tourists about the form that we're going to have set up. But I think it's very important that we do, because otherwise we're going to lose our tourist industry. So I'd say use a different set of forms as far as signs that would give you red, yellow, and green so that it would tell you when you are in danger of riptide.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wallace, what are your thoughts on beach safety measures taken on Oak Island and throughout the county after the 4 drowning victims we've had in 2013? And do you think there should be more safety measures taken?
Those drowning victims were a tragedy. None of them were on Oak Island. I managed Channel 8 from 2003 through 2008, and when the technology came down to go digital, we started broadcasting the NOAA's Break the Grip of the Rip animation video. We have that signage everywhere. We had the brochures here at Town Hall, PD, saw some at Dosher Hospital. We have our volunteers, our Beach Preservation Society goes out, they're on the beach. We have our Oak Island Water Rescue Station 44 that patrols the beach. The main thing I see that we could possibly do, we include that information on Break the Grip of the Rip into the packets for the renters. We don't want to give them that information. We want it to come from the experts, from NOAA. One thing I do think we could look at is our beach patrol, have a flag on that beach patrol, a green, yellow, or red flag, because that runs up and down the beach and you can keep it current.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to ask you to stay there to respond first to the next question. The 6th question sent in for the forum this evening. Ms. Wallace, how do you feel about Brunswick County being placed in the Myrtle Beach MPO as opposed to Wilmington? And what, if anything, can you do about it?
Keep fighting. Still doesn't make any sense to me. What were they thinking? The Town Council, the Southeast Brunswick Mayors just recently appointed me as our representative on the RTAC, the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, and we have discussed that at length. We haven't given up on getting Brunswick County and the Wilmington MPO. I don't understand why they think that the traffic coming from the state line is closer for a for those that don't know, Betty, help you here, Metropolitan Planning Organization. She hates acronyms. We've got Leland right there, just across the bridge from New Hanover County. So we've been fighting, the Oak Island Town Council is fighting it, the Brunswick County mayors around Leland, northeast and southeast Brunswick County, we are still fighting it, and we're not going to give up until we get into Wilmington.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Coe, ask you to respond. What are your thoughts about Brunswick County being placed in the Myrtle Beach MPO as opposed to Wilmington, and what, if anything, can you do about it?
I was shocked, as most people were, that we were included in that. I felt that we have a lot more in common with the beaches to our north, and that's where it should be. I think it's a fight that is definitely worth fighting, and something that that all the mayors from this area should come together and take this as far as they can and try to convince the state not to do this, because this is not, I have not met one person in town that believes we should be in that group, but for some reason I have no clue why they assume that we should.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warren, your response, sir. How do you feel about Brunswick County being placed in the Myrtle Beach MPO as opposed to Wilmington, and what, if anything, can you do about it?
I basically think that it was a tragedy for them to change it from Wilmington to Myrtle Beach. But the idea is all we can do is keep fighting. I know that we had Congressman McIntyre and Senator Higgins, and they all have written letters and tried to get it reversed, but so far nothing has happened. But only thing we can do is keep organizing and keep fighting.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warren, I'm going to ask you to stay there, if you would, please,
Okay.
to begin the responses to the next question. One of the residents wanted to know, what will you do, if elected, to promote a better atmosphere on town council?
Okay. Well, with town council, you know, and like with any boards or any organization, one thing that you want to do is to work as a team, you know, and the team, working as a team, you get a lot more accomplished than working as an individual. And being on the council, you know, as the mayor, really, you don't have a vote anyway. So, but as far as the town council, you can constantly encourage them to keep working as a team to accomplish a lot of things that the citizens of Oak Island really need accomplished.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wallace, what will you do, if re-elected, to promote a better atmosphere on town council?
Since January 2012, I think we have a respectable, we have a very professional, and we have a very courteous council board. Our town clerk told me early in 2012 that what we have is a group of free thinkers, but they have been wonderful at voicing their opinions on the issues without undermining another's opinion on the issues. We've had a lot of 3-2 votes, but as was proven when they just appointed the engineers for this project, one of the council members didn't even make up her mind until she got into it, and she considered the opinion of one of the other council members who was an expert on that subject. That just pleased me to no end. So I think we got a very good council. We had a unanimous vote on the budget this year. That's never happened before.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Coe, I ask you to respond. What will you do, if elected, to promote a better atmosphere on town council?
It's extremely important that you have a council. They need to understand they work for the residents of the town, and they need to be focused as a team, because you're never going to get anything done if you have some type of personal agenda in the way of all the issues that we're facing. I know as a mayor, you're basically going to have to be like a cheerleader. You've got to get your team together. There's a lot of different personalities, but I think if you work at it and you understand and get to meet the people and know them on a personal level, that maybe we could bring that together, at least try and just continually try. But we have got to pull together in this town, having everything split a lot, well, other than the budget. We did have a unanimous vote on that, but there's a lot of other issues that it just seems to always come down the same way.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wallace, I'm going to ask for your response to the next question. Again, sent in by one of the residents, and I have to set this up a little bit, so please stick with me. This resident asked the question, saying, residents in the former town of Yopon Beach paid for the construction of their own sewer system years before consolidation with Long Beach. We, the resident says, are still on our own system, yet the utility bills show we are paying for the new Long Beach sewer system, which we don't benefit from. Their question, what is your solution to what this person calls unfairness?
That basically is a council issue, but doesn't mean the mayor can't talk to the people out there and give them some education on this issue. That, and each of these former towns has a point. When the towns consolidated in 1999, the people of the town of Long Beach had their water rates increased, so that kind of helped support the debt that was remaining of the Yopon system. But there again, at the same time, the people, I call it Fish Factory Road, it's far beyond the old town of Yopon, okay? They are being served by, it's being treated by the Fish Factory Road system. And ours in the expanded area, and I'm part of it, I'm costing myself money, but we should have to pay for the expanded portion. The only way we'll be able to do that is get new software, what the council has approved, so that we can charge 2 separate sewer district fees, and we'll get it then.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Warren, what the resident wants to know from Yopon Beach, they paid for the construction of their own sewer system years before consolidation, yet the bills show they're paying for the new Long Beach sewer system. What is your solution to what this resident calls unfairness?
Well, I would go along with what the mayor just said, you know, that they're working on trying to get 2 separate billing systems. And I think that would be, that should relieve some of the anxiety from the people that are on Yopon Beach. But I think that's about what we could do right now, other than try to see if we can get some more grants to pay for the system that we have here. You know, if we get enough grants to help cover some of that debt service, then we could probably free that up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Coe, I ask for your response on what this resident calls, what would your solution be to the unfairness of people in Yopon Beach who paid for their own sewer system, yet paying for the new Long Beach sewer system that they don't benefit from?
Yeah, I totally agree. I know that the town is working on it. What the problem I have with it, I really don't understand, is there's a software issue, but to be able to separate the billing in a way, if I lived in that section of town, I would feel the same way as the residents there do, that it's not being done fairly. I just don't understand why it takes so long to get a software together to be able to split the billing up. That's my big issue with it, is why are we taking so much time? This has been an issue from the beginning, and it's just taken way too much time.
Mr. Coe, thank you. I'm going to have you stay there, please, if you would, to respond first to the next question. It is, what specific ideas do you have to draw new tourists and visitors to Oak Island to help improve the local economy?
I think that making sure that our beaches are taken care of and that is most presentable is one of the main draws. We're a tourist economy on the island. I think you have to be careful with things. I know there's been an issue with the beach canopies on the beach. You have to be real careful with that to be able to find a common ground to where you're not detouring tourism, that you're trying to promote it. I think the town could go a little bit more as far as advertisement. I know that people know the area, and it's been promoted in the past, but I think if we got a group of people together, even just like I said earlier, within the town of some professionals that maybe could come up with an advertising campaign of some type to be able to promote the tourism, because when we do that, it benefits everyone in the town.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warren, I ask your response, sir. What specific ideas do you have to draw new tourists and visitors to Oak Island to help improve the local economy?
Same as Mr. Scott says. You know, first thing is you have to have a beach that the tourists would like to come, and they can come and enjoy it. So having a nice beach, having the sands and the dunes, I think that would draw more people here. Secondly, safety. You know, you want to make sure that when they come to the beach that they are safe. They're not going to get caught up in a riptide and get drowned. So that's safety would be another idea that would draw more people here. So between safety and the beach itself, I think that they have already they have a tourist committee set up that really does the advertisement and things of that nature. So, but I think safety and putting the sand on the beach and make the beach as beautiful as possible.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wallace, what specific ideas do you have to draw new tourists and visitors to Oak Island to improve the local economy?
Keep what we already have, the people that live here and the people that volunteer here, to keep our beach clean, our Beach Preservation Society, all our beach parents, our turtleness parents that educate about the turtles. In the March 2013 issue of Dog Fancy magazine, we were listed as one of the top 10 dog-friendly beaches in the United States. You can't buy that kind of advertising. It's because of our people and our business people. Last year, USA Today had a report. What is the most family-friendly beach in each state? That's coastal. In North Carolina, Oak Island was named as the most family-friendly beach. And it's all because of the people that live here, our volunteers, and our business people who work every day to draw more business, and they welcome our tourists. Our residents are so friendly to them. I've had so many people tell me they come to visit here, and they're going to move here next year because they saw it.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Warren, I'm going to ask you first to respond to the next question. What ideas do you have to address the number of rundown and abandoned properties on Oak Island? Should minimum housing standards be put in place for owners to maintain their properties?
Well, I'm sure that we should have some form of code enforcement that's already in place. If not, we definitely need to have some zoning and to make sure that the rundown buildings are taken care of. Also, we should have a development agency also, so that the person can also recruit new businesses to come in to help some of the burden with the residents in Oak Island, because first of all, between the taxes and the sewer, you know, they are being it's been a burden on them. So, and a lot of times with the economy the way it is, and then with the recession that has been for such a long period of time, you know, people just can't afford to do it. So I think that the town manager should kind of work with those people to make sure that we can get that taken care of.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Coe, what ideas do you have to address the number of rundown and abandoned properties on Oak Island, and should minimum housing standards be put in place for owners to maintain their properties?
I feel that, I know the town has ordinances against, you know, homes being run down and not taken care of. It is a problem on the island. If you live beside of one, it's really going to, you know, hurt your chances to be able to sell your home and to drive the value of your home down. I think that if the enforcement of it should be more aggressive, but also to work with the people first to see if we can find a solution some other way other than to just penalize the person, just go by and give them a fine, but see if there's some way you can work with them to be able to get them up to standard. Because in this economy, a lot of people, a lot of elderly people and people have lost jobs, and it's very hard to have, you know, good meaning to try to keep their property up. They just don't have the means, and maybe we could help them maybe find the means for that.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wallace, what ideas do you have to address the number of rundown, abandoned properties on Oak Island? Should minimum housing standards be put in place for owners to maintain their properties?
We already have minimum housing standards in place. As far as the maintenance of their properties, it goes through our town code of ordinances. it goes through our code of ordinances that covers nuisance properties, and it also goes through the Board of Health. If you have a property that is so poorly maintained that it's attracting vermin and rodents, then you can report that to the health department. Our development services department and our code enforcement officers are working on that every day, but they can't catch it all. They're out there trying to do inspections. If you know of a property that you think is not meeting the health department's laws, or if you know of a property, grass can't be more than 2 feet tall. They've got to mow it. And we do have enforcement procedures that we can enact and send them notices of violations. I just talked to a lady today, and Josh has been working with them for 5 or 6 months to get theirs cleaned up.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Coe, I ask you for the response to the next question, sir. Oak Island owns a golf course. Can you give some suggestions on ways to capitalize on the asset?
I think that I've seen other par 3 courses in beach communities that have done well. I don't understand why ours keeps running at a deficit. I know it was pretty much given to the town, and the town has struggled with what to do with it. I would like to look at if there is a way to better manage it and to promote it, to be able to get it to where it is an asset for the town and for that area. I know the residents of that area are very much involved with it, and they want it to be kept up and to be an asset. But I think that maybe if there's got to be something going on. I know the economy is down, and that type of industry is hurting. And I know it will come back, and it's a great another draw for tourism in our area. But I think that maybe it's a management problem there that needs to be looked into, and maybe to see what kind of support that they need to make it profitable.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wallace, Oak Island owns a golf course. Can you give some suggestions on ways to capitalize on the asset?
I think we have done a good job in the past couple of years in capitalizing on the asset of having a par 3. We found out through several years of work, and in fact I talked to the manager of the Oak Island Golf Club about possibly managing that and what they would have to charge us. It's virtually impossible to run a par 3 golf course and run it at a profit. You're virtually always going to run it as a loss. Better management has come in since October of 2012. The drain has gone down from like $140,000 a year down to maybe $80,000 a year on that golf course. The council is looking at paying that out of the general fund under our recreation department rather than depleting our accommodations tax fund. That has been paid for through our accommodations tax fund since we accepted the gift in 2005 or 2007. It's drained $710,000 that should have gone to our beach fund.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Warren, Oak Island owns a golf course. Can you give some suggestions on ways to capitalize on the asset?
I would just recommend selling it to a private developer. I just think that the town should not be in the golf course business. So that would be my recommendation, to sell it to a private developer.
Thank you, sir, and I'm going to have you respond first to the next question. Mr. Warren, would you be in favor of allowing high-rise condos or commercial hotels taller than 40 feet in Oak Island as a way of bringing new revenue into the community?
Not on the beach front, but on the mainland, I would.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Coe, I ask you for your response. Would you be in favor of allowing high-rise condos or commercial hotels taller than 40 feet as a way of bringing new revenue to Oak Island?
On island, I'm against it. Off island, I would be for it if we can prove that the infrastructure, our sewer system, and everything else in town services can support it. I know that it's been talked about, different people I've talked to, about maybe having something near our jet port. But I would really like to see that we don't get into another problem with not being able to provide the service that it needs. And I think a lot of design, any kind of design like that would have to be put before the people, and almost to a public referendum before you're going to allow something like that to happen, because you don't want to disturb the sight lines and the beauty of our island.
Mr. Coe, thank you. Ms. Wallace, Would you be in favor of allowing high-rise condos or commercial hotels taller than 40 feet in Oak Island as a way of bringing new revenue to the community?
We have had a referendum, I think it was '07, on the election ballot that year, and they wanted to know whether the people in town wanted to keep our height limits at 35 and 41, and in fact, disallow the 41-foot height if even a corner was in the 35-foot zone. I was a ringleader in getting people out to get to the polls that year and vote no, we do not want our height limits raised. Over on the mainland on Long Beach Road, that's served by Southeast Brunswick Sanitary District. They're set up to take any flow that may come from the development of the preserve. We have a CUP that's been issued for a marina east of the old bridge, hopefully when the economy improves, but every foot height you had to come in on setback. Over on the Middleton Road corridor, there has long been a new bridge corridor plan of action, forget the technical name for it, but we've already approved a conditional use permit over there also.
Thank you, ma'am, and I'm going to have you stand there if you can, please, to respond first to the next question. Several beach towns across the area are hoping to increase tourism by adding a boardwalk or games or rides or other amusement park ideas. Would you be willing to consider those ideas for the town of Oak Island?
Several beach communities, I don't know of any in Brunswick County, and that kind of goes along with our height limitation thing. When we had the conditional use permit public hearing for Island Passage, which is over across the new bridge, they had in it maybe a water park, but all of that would be planned over probably just on that new bridge corridor, because I just don't know if there's enough land over on Long Beach Road or enough land they would be able to buy to do like a water park. But I believe that most of the developers all the way up to the corner of Midway and 211 are planning. I know that one of them at Midway and 211 on the southwest side was possibly going to put in like a boardwalk type arcade with ice cream and that sort of thing, kind of like you used to see in Myrtle Beach. But we have plenty of mainland property to put that stuff on without destroying our little island portion of town.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Warren, several beach towns across the area are hoping to increase tourism by adding a boardwalk or games or rides or even amusement park ideas. Would you be willing to consider those ideas for the town of Oak Island?
As the mayor said, I would be willing to consider it over on the mainland. But as far as on the beach area here, I don't think that we have enough land that we could would accommodate such a boardwalk or either the amusement parks and things. But I think on the mainland, I think that it would definitely be valuable.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Coe? Several beach towns across the area are hoping to increase tourism by adding a boardwalk, games, rides, even amusement park ideas. Would you be willing to consider those ideas for the town of Oak Island?
As far as the town being involved in, as far as the boardwalk itself, I don't think that is what we need here on this island. If you've been up to the pier that we own, it's starting to get where it needs repair. So we're going to have to come up with money for that to be able to make it safe, or we're going to have a problem with that. I think the boardwalk, especially with storms and everything else, that the actual upkeep of it would be tremendous. And I just think it's a debt that we don't need. As far as an amusement park off the island, on areas that wouldn't be close to residential areas, if that's even possible, if we have an area that big, that would be fine, but by a private individual, not by the town. Just let it remain something that a developer or a company may want to do.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask you to stay there, Mr. Coe, if you would please, to respond first to the next question. Residents sent in an email saying they have read where there is money in the town budget for streets. How would you feel about using some of that money for sidewalks, especially in the old Yopon section of Oak Island Drive?
I think that the conditions of our roads now is much work as they need. I know there's money coming from the Powell Bill Fund for that. Will it fix all the roads? No. There's going to be roads that are missed. If I had to make a decision over a sidewalk or a road, I would take care of the road. The sidewalks are a wonderful thing, but the roads are necessary. We have to have them. And anyone that's ridden down any of our roads sees the problem, knows about the problem. I would rather see the money put towards that.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wallace, resident wrote in saying they hear there is money in the town budget for streets. How do you feel about using some money from that for sidewalks, especially in the old Yopon section of Oak Island Drive?
There's a certain area of the old Yopon section, and this is the old Yopon section of the town of Oak Island. And we do have some PAL bill funds in the fund, about $900,000 until this coming fiscal year. We get about $300,000 a year. We used $1.5 million of that to do the street resurfacing project that we just completed about 18 months ago. A lot of that was on these street cut-throughs, and it's just going to have to be redone. We've got to take a look at possibly there is a slight possibility to moderate possibility we might be able to get enough back from those contractors to take care of a lot of those street cut-throughs so we don't have to spend the $5 million it would take to repair them. And if that's possible, then we can resurface the worst roads in town and possibly have some money to fix the sidewalks that we do have and possibly extend some of them and angle the curbs instead of having them dropped off.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Warren, resident wrote in saying they heard there is some money in the town budget for streets. So the question, how do you feel about using some money from that for sidewalks, especially in the old Yopon section of Oak Island Drive?
Well, I feel that the streets right now are in terrible shape. And I think that any funds that we have available, we should use them to repair the streets first. If there's any funds left over, then I feel that we should do some sidewalks in Yopon area and also some that's needed in Oak Island area too. So I would be in favor of doing some streets if there's funds left over.
Thank you, sir. Candidates, we don't have enough time in the hour to ask another question and have you all respond and then do your closing statement. So what I'm going to do is begin with our closing statements right now. Again, we had a drawing prior to the event this evening. We're giving 2 minutes for a closing statement to each of the candidates. And first, with her closing statement, mayoral candidate Betty Wallace. Ms. Wallace, your closing statement, no more than 2 minutes, ma'am.
It's funny how the drawings ended up that I get to go first both times, but that's how it works. I was first elected in 2009, sworn into office in December of 2009. Made up my mind I was going to communicate with everybody out there with my Facebook page. That's been a wonderful communications tool. I have loved every minute of being mayor. I have made friends. I have met people. All the volunteers that we have in this town, I mean, you can't not just love it. I mean, I dare say half of our adult population is volunteers. So no council member, no mayor can do anything alone in this town. It takes a majority vote of 3 on the council to do anything. The mayor can't. Certainly, the mayor doesn't have a vote, but the mayor does have a voice. I welcome people. Please email me. It's too long an email address to give you here. Email me from the town's website, oakislandnc.com. I plan to continue to, like I said, work on that wastewater project and use my knowledge of where we stand on the actual permitting of that and get that project closed off and what we know we're going to be facing on that. Other than that wastewater project, we've got building permits being issued right and left. I really don't see a whole lot. The controversy is ending. And other than the sewer district fee, which we were talking about a while ago, we're about to get the software that if the council chooses, they can set up a separate sewer district fee. One of the issues is you have to have local legislation to do that. And yes, our software currently can't do that. But council is about to approve new software that we can set that up. I want to help spearhead talking to everybody about everything that council is discussing, and I want to get your ideas and your concerns and wishes to them also. Thank you.
Ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Next for his closing statement this evening, mayoral candidate Mr. Charles Warren. Mr. Warren, no more than 2 minutes, sir.
Okay. Yes, I would like to thank all the residents and for coming out this evening and for this forum, and thank the League of Women for putting it on, and thank you, John, for moderating it. I am, as I said initially, I am a charter member of Oak Island. I moved here in 1999 before Oak Island was even in existence. And I've been here, and I've been very involved in Oak Island. I've been very involved in the county, and I am I love this place. And as it stands today, you know, we have varieties of all types of people that live here, you know, and we need to become more aggressive. We need to be open it up some so that we can have people can get different ideas from other people. So I am very pleased to be here tonight, and I'm excited to be a resident of Oak Island. And I just ask you all for your vote, just to give me a shot. Thank you.
Mr. Warren, thank you. And our last closing statement this evening, we will hear from mayoral candidate Mr. Scott Coe. Mr. Coe, no more than 2 minutes, please.
All right, thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on. For all the residents, this shows the interest that we have in our local politics. This is a great thing. I'm not a politician. I'm just a regular resident, hardworking person of the island. I feel there's a better way to do things, and there's a better way to get people together and to communicate what the residents want of the town. I know I can do a good job. I hope that I have convinced some of you to vote for me. And I look forward to a great election and for us to be able to come up with the best people in the positions that are available. Thank you.
Mr. Scott Coe, Ms. Betty Wallace, Mr. Charles Warren. Let's give them a round of applause for this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to be here this evening and answer questions sent in to us by residents here in Oak Island. That is going to end our first forum for this evening of the mayoral candidates. We will get Jim Medlin, Loman Scott, and Darrell Vickers up here in about 5 minutes and get started with part 2 of our program right here on WECT.com. Thank you, and we'll be right back. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm John Evans of WECT News. We are in Oak Island for the second of our 2 candidates forums this evening. We are joined now by 3 candidates running for 2 seats on Oak Island Town Council: Jim Medlin, Loman Scott, and Darrell Vickers. Here's how the next 55 to 60-minute forum will go. We have a drawing we had before this evening began, and we had each one of the candidates draw and to determine the opening and closing statement order. Each one will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then we will take turns, if you will, rotate how they answer the questions sent in by residents of Oak Island. They will have 1 minute to answer those questions, and then each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. Along with WECT News, we would like to thank the League of Women Voters for helping us put on this forum here this evening. And of course, we'd like to thank the town of Oak Island for hosting this in such a wonderful town council chambers and town hall building. We do have 3 candidates, as I said, running for town council here in Oak Island. We're going to begin with the first of our 2-minute opening statements. And to begin with his opening statement this evening, we will hear from candidate Loman Scott. Mr. Scott, 2 minutes for your opening statement, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank the League of Women Voters and the town of Oak Island for letting us come up here. And don't be mistaken, the town of Oak Island is not some entity. You people, my friends, you are the town of Oak Island. I'm 62 years old. I'm married to Susan Scott, who is a broker at Caldwell Banker Seacoast Realty. We live in the old Yopon section near the Yopon Pier. We live in harmony with 2 cats, a dog, and a bird. And if you want to meet one of my cats afterwards, just let me know, because I think I wore part of one of them up here. But, We've been here off and on since 1978 when my parents bought a property here. In 1990, I became a property owner here. And about 10 years ago, we moved here permanently, and it's been great. My profession was as a police officer for the city of Greensboro, and my last assignment was 10 years in the Major Crimes Division with the Greensboro Police Department. And during that time, I think that I had an opportunity to work with people from all walks of life and all walks of life, and I learned how to deal with many different types of people. I've also been a member of the hurricane response team here. I've been a member of the planning board, chairman of the planning board, and right now I'm serving as the chairman of the emergency services committee, which deals with issues with the fire department and police department. And I thank you very much.
Mr. Scott, thank you. Next, for his opening statement this evening, we will hear from candidate Darrell Vickers. Mr. Vickers.
Thank you. My name is Darrell Vickers. I am a candidate for town council here in Oak Island. I'm a retired engineer, businessman, and educator. My wife and I live at 115 Southeast 29th Street, and we have lived there since spring of 2011. My wife, Hope, is a Methodist minister, and she serves Epworth United Methodist Church in Durham, North Carolina. We have 3 children and 3 grandchildren. I bring a fresh, unbiased, new perspective to solving the problems facing us today. I think like an engineer, and I manage by consensus, and I make decisions based upon data and facts, not upon emotions. I am more interested in solutions than I am in who gets the credit. My education, experience, and skills can be put to use by the citizens of Oak Island. Prior to joining Fayetteville State University, where I was for 6.5 years and served as the interim director of the MBA program, I spent 5 years as the Group Vice President of Community Development and Public Affairs for the Greater Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce. We had over 1,440 businesses as members, and we served a community of more than 300,000 people. During that time, we achieved a remarkable turnaround in downtown Fayetteville and set in motion the relocation of FORCECOM from Atlanta, Georgia, to Fort Bragg. We all worked together to change the image and improve the economy of that community. I want to apply the same expertise to the problems facing Oak Island. Thank you.
Mr. Vickers, thank you. And for our last opening statement this evening, we will hear from council candidate Mr. Jim Medlin. Mr. Medlin?
Thank you, John, and thank all of you for being here tonight. This is about the fullest I've ever seen this room. It's a pleasant sight. My name is Jim Medlin. If you don't know me, I have served on council for the past 4 years. I live in Oak Island with my wife, Frances. We've been married 50 years. We have a son who lives in Southport. He has 2 little girls, our precious granddaughters, and he works with the Brunswick County Sheriff's Department. Before moving to Oak Island, we moved from Charlotte down here, and we've been here 12 years. I was a building contractor, and we built houses and sold them, and people made homes out of them. Some people call themselves a home builder. I was a house builder. But I was also chief of the rescue squad there and served on several county boards and committees there. I've served on the council for the last 4 years, and it's been, for the most part, a good experience. I've learned a lot. I've met a lot of wonderful people. I've come to know some of you that I probably never would have known before. And so that part of it has been very positive for me. And you might say, well, why are you seeking re-election? Well, let me tell you why. I'd like to continue to be a part of the ongoing progress that we've made over the last 2 years. You may not realize the progress has been made because it's been slow. It's been slow getting started. But we've made a lot of progress in the last 2 years. But there's still much to do, and I would like to continue to be a part of that. I'd like to continue to create an area of economic development for Oak Island that would enhance our business district, that would create a better business climate here, to create more revenue streams for our town, to take some of the financial burden of this wastewater system off the back of the taxpayers. And I know you all can feel that pain. I feel the pain just as you do. We have, as a council, have in the last 2 years created a lot of unity, and we're working together, and I'd like to continue to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Medlin, I'm going to ask you to stay there, please, sir, if you would, and respond first to the first question. Sent in by a resident saying residents of Oak Island are now paying a fee for stormwater but don't have storm drains. What is your plan to address what this resident calls the utility mismanagement that has happened in Oak Island?
Stormwater is an issue anywhere in coastal areas. It's an issue here. It's been an issue here for a long time. There are even some things being done here with stormwater that are illegal. We've talked about a lot of those things. We've looked at a lot of solutions to problems. We're working on those. We're trying to find ways to better control the stormwater. When you have the kind of streets we have where you don't have curb and gutter and storm drains so you can direct the water where you want it to go, it's very difficult to control. But we are looking at the issue, and hopefully we can come up with some more workable solutions to the problem.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scott, I ask you to respond to this question, sir. Residents of Oak Island are now paying a fee for stormwater but don't have storm drains. What is your plan to address what this resident calls the utility mismanagement that has happened in Oak Island?
I don't think we have a utility mismanagement. We don't, for a fact, have curb and gutter, but we do have drains, and I don't know how many there are, but you can ride up and down Oak Island Drive and different places, and you can find drains, and they all have to be maintained. And yes, we do have stormwater drains here in Oak Island.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vickers, your response to address this resident's concerns that this resident calls the utility mismanagement that has occurred in Oak Island by paying a stormwater fee but not having storm drains?
Well, the assumption that you have to have the drain with the fee, most of the time we'll find that the fee is associated with the treatment of the stormwater once it has run off, but it doesn't necessarily have to flow off in contained piping underneath the street, but it has to get off. One of the things I'd like to see in this area is pervious paving so that the stormwater, instead of running off, goes down into the ground. And that's something that you've seen in a lot of new areas, particularly Costco over in Wilmington. You can see that the storm water goes straight down into the ground. And the other side of the coin is the retention ponds that are associated with stormwater. We have to accommodate that. It's a very difficult task, but I don't think we should necessarily assume that it has to go into pipes and go in underneath the ground, but it does have to be taken care of, and those are two solutions to do that.
Mr. Vickers, I'm going to ask you to stand there, please, sir, and
Yes, sir.
respond first to the next question. What will you do to reduce the tax burden on absentee homeowners?
Tax burdens can be best reduced by increasing the denominator of who gets it divided up to. We've got a limited number of lots upon which the tax burden is being distributed. Right now, we've got a debt of $177 million. It's being divided over 10,000 lots, or over 10,000 lots, which means that the burden per lot is $17,700. We've got thousands of acres that can be developed that belong to Oak Island on the opposite side of the intercoastal in the southwest corner of Middleton and Midway. If we can get that developed, we will have more people to absorb the tax burden that we have. We have got to move towards economic development, and that development has got to be taking place outside of the main portion of the island.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, what will you do, if elected, to reduce the tax burden on absentee homeowners?
Well, I am concerned about the tax burden on absentee homeowners, but I'll be honest with you, I'm more concerned about the tax burden on those of us that live here. And we've got to find some ways to create more revenue, and that has to look like economic development. There's really no other way. There are ways it can be done that are feasible, that'll blend with everything else that we do here. We've got a lot of vacant land over on the bridge corridor that can be used for economic development. That is the greatest concern. I know the absentee taxpayers have to pay taxes. If you own property here, you're going to have to pay taxes. But, you know, we, the people that live here, are the ones that are supporting this place, the ones that keep it up, and I'm concerned about you and me.
Mr. Medlin, thank you, sir. Mr. Scott, what would you do if elected to reduce the tax burden on absentee homeowners?
Nothing. And the reason is the absentee property owners get the same protection that we do so far as police, fire, and even though they're not here, they receive the same protection. We're in this together, all of us, and I don't foresee giving breaks to anyone just because they're an absentee property owner.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scott, I'm going to ask you to respond first to the next question, if you will. What efforts do you plan to take to avoid the massive projected increase of flood insurance costs for property owners in Oak Island?
The only thing I can think that we can do is what the mayor candidate said, and that's to get this mayor's association together, and we need to lobby, and we need to lobby hard with our state representatives, and to keep the pressure on them to try to help us with this problem.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vickers, what efforts do you plan to take to avoid the massive projected increase of flood insurance costs for property owners in Oak Island?
The decision on the flood owners and the flood insurance comes from Raleigh. And I have been fortunate enough to have developed a lot of relationships and friendships with elected officials in Raleigh and in the state, across the state. That's where it's got to be. We've got to have a presence. We've got to be known. We've got to be lobbying for it. But we can't do it alone. We've got to work with the rest of the coastal communities and deal with our legislators in Raleigh. Fortunately, we have we have a senator and a representative here that work very, very closely with us and very close accord with leading the administration that's in Raleigh right now. But my experience put me in touch with the legislation, and I know how it works.
Mr. Vickers, thank you. Mr. Medlin, what efforts do you plan to take to help avoid the massive projected increase of flood insurance costs for property owners in Oak Island?
Well, our existing council has sent a resolution to Raleigh voicing our displeasure with it. The Brunswick Mayors Consortium is heavily involved in working on this and doing everything they can to try to reverse it. We need to lobby Raleigh. We need to call, not just we, but you, all of us need to call our representatives in Raleigh and let them know how displeased we are with this. I think sometimes the squeaky wheel gets greased, and if we squeak the loudest, we may get some relief there. But we need to let them know that we're dissatisfied with it, and the only way we're going to let them know is to contact them. The council can only do so much, and we're doing all we can do. We're going to have to depend on you to help us as citizens.
Mr. Medlin, thank you. Mr. Vickers, I ask you first to respond to the next question. What is your plan to bring in new revenue without increasing taxes on property owners?
Development. That's what I did 5 years in Fayetteville, community development. And I can tell you straight up that economic development takes place along transportation and communication corridors. But businesses will locate where their employees want to live. So we have the opportunity to work in this portion of Brunswick County to get economic development taking place along 211 and around what used to be the state port plan. Those people, if we can get economic development there, those people want to live here on our island, and they will pay good dollars for our houses, and our property values will increase. But that's the secret, is economic development and providing a quality of life that makes businesses want to locate in your community. We have that here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scott, what is your plan to bring in new revenue without increasing taxes on property owners?
Well, of course, like Mr. Vickers said, I think that development, especially residential development on our island, is very important. And I think that we've seen over the past few months an increase in building permits, and I think that's great. And I want to keep the island a residential, quiet neighborhood. And we can do that by building nice residential homes. There's a lot of land that has not been built out. I think also we can perhaps look at doing some advertising, maybe in some national publications about our island. It's going to be a very rare thing, and we may be one of the few islands right now that is a quiet, residential type island, and I think that's going to be very important in the future, and I think it's going to be a great selling point for residential homes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, what is your plan to bring in new revenue for the town without increasing taxes on property owners?
Well, I've heard it said many times in the last 4 years that Oak Island has always been a nice, quiet, quaint little fishing town. But I would submit to you tonight that a nice, quiet, quaint little fishing town cannot sustain a $150 million sewer system. We've got a lot on our shoulders, and we're going to have to create some development to help pay for it. That is the only way we're going to be able to survive it. What kind of development? Economic development, the kind that will create jobs, the kind that will pour money into our economy. But let me tell you something. We've got to maintain our beaches. If we don't, we won't have any more tourists. There won't be anything here for them to come for. So we've got a lot on our plate. We've got to create that development. We've got to maintain our beaches and keep them in good shape. And we've got to try to find ways to grow our economy.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, I'm going to ask you to stay there, please, and respond first to the next question. Question sent in from a resident here in Oak Island asks, how can the city, the town, continue to increase taxes on properties that are non-buildable?
I'm not aware that we have increased any taxes on non-buildable properties. As a matter of fact, I would say that we haven't. And so my answer to that would be, we aren't. We should never.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vickers, response to the question sent in from a resident in Oak Island, how can the town continue to increase taxes on properties that are non-buildable?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about are properties that are located in flood zones and areas that are essentially going to present more cost than what they're going to yield in terms of profit. And that's a very serious problem. I don't know what the solution is to that. If they have a lot and they've paid for it, I don't know what the solution is. Just really, I'm afraid that they're going to be stuck with it, and they're going to have to sell it at a loss. But if you either that or you put down the pilings and you build on it, because like Jim says, everybody is every lot that has been sold on there has the potential to be built upon. It's just, does the cost exceed the return that they're going to get on it? So I don't know if there's a solution.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scott, how can the town continue to increase taxes on properties that are non-buildable?
I don't know that taxes have been increased. Of course, the non-buildable lots, the tax rate's very low on them anyway. That's about the only answer I have on that. I don't know of any that are being overtaxed.
Thank you, sir. And I'm going to ask you to stay there to respond first to the next question, if you would. Several beach communities along the Carolina coast are hoping to increase tourism by adding a boardwalk or games, rides, or other amusement park ideas. Would you be willing to consider those ideas for the town of Oak Island?
Not at this time, and two reasons for that. One of the reasons, of course, is financial. We can't afford to do that at this time. And the other reason is I go back, and I can't help it. I go back to Mr. Middleton's dream of this staying a quiet residential beach, and that's what I want. I want development, and I want it off the island. If they want to build some hotels and whatnot, I say let's do it. But I want to keep the height restrictions the same because that is the glue that holds us together and keeps us a nice residential beach.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, several beach towns along the coast are hoping to increase tourism by adding a boardwalk or games, rides, or other amusement park ideas. Would you be willing to consider those ideas for the town of Oak Island?
I've learned over the past 4 years one thing, and I've learned it well. You don't need to take anything off the table. When you have need, you need to leave it on the table and talk about what your needs are and see how you can implement whatever you need to implement to meet your needs. I don't know about the games. I assume they're thinking about Ferris wheels and water slides and those kinds of things. I don't know that there's an area on Oak Island large enough to sustain that. I think it would have to be done off the island across the bridge corridor. I certainly wouldn't be against it. But just keep one thing in mind. Anything that's built on the other side of that bridge is going to be on county water and county sewer, and it's not going to have any impact on our system, and we are not going to get any revenue from it to help sustain this wastewater system. So, yeah, keep it on the table, whatever.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vickers, several beach towns along the coast are hoping to increase tourism by adding a boardwalk, games, rides, or even amusement park ideas. Would you be willing to consider those ideas for the town of Oak Island?
Absolutely. One of the things that you have to do is to establish a vision for a community. And one of the things that so many people have said to me is it would be nice to have something that would attract the teenagers and have a pedestrian-friendly downtown area. And we've got a couple business districts, Yopon and Long Beach, and we need pedestrian-friendly downtown areas. Now, that doesn't mean the city pays for it. We have parcels of land down there that can be accumulated and build a very, very attractive area for visitors and residents to congregate. They can have restaurants, they can have something like Dave & Buster's, for those of you who are familiar with the Dave & Buster's, maybe a small 3-lane bowling alley. But we can have someplace downtown, and it can be done with private developers. All we have to do is establish the vision and make the necessary arrangements for a pedestrian-friendly downtown.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, I'm going to ask you for the response to the next question first. Question coming in, what are your feelings about adding lifeguards in some locations on the beach? And if you favor it, how would you propose to pay for it?
Well, you know, anytime you lose a life, it's tragic. And I actually visually saw one of those this summer, and it was shocking to experience that. Lifeguards, I don't think there's any way. I don't think the town can afford that. We have over 9 miles of beach. We do have to find better ways to educate people about rip currents, and we are working on that. The council is working on that now, trying to come up with some ways. If you have ideas, we'd love to hear them from you. We need to find some ways before tourist season that we can put some things in place that will help with that. Will we ever be able to completely do away with it? I don't think so. Even if you had lifeguards, you can't completely prohibit it. But we can improve what we're doing, and as I said, we're looking at doing that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vickers, what are your feelings about adding lifeguards in some locations on the beach? And if you're in favor of it, how would you propose to pay for it?
I'm not in favor of lifeguards per se. I am in favor of volunteers equipped with 4-wheel drives that can spend the time talking to our visitors and can be equipped with radios such that if there is an emergency, they can get a response to it. I have been to beaches where we have our senior citizens equipped with a neon vest, riding down, talking to people, encouraging them, being friendly, being warm, being hospitable. Our beaches are our greatest asset that we have, and one of our greatest underutilized assets are our senior citizens. I'd love to equip them with what one fellow called make them gator geezers.
You have to explain that one to me after the forum, sir. Mr. Scott, I'm going to ask you to respond to the same question. What are your feelings about adding lifeguards in some locations on the beach? And if you favor them, how would you propose to pay for it?
As chairman of the Emergency Services Committee, we have discussed this for hours and hours. And unfortunately, we've not come up with a good answer yet. The problem with lifeguards is if you have a certain section, and I think there's rules and regulations covering this for like 600 feet. We've got miles and miles of island. And there have been lawsuits because lifeguards didn't go outside of that. There's lawsuits because people drown without lifeguards. It's a problem, and I don't see an easy answer to it at this time. I think warnings about rip currents and education right now is about the only thing we can do.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vickers, I'm going to ask you for the first response to the next question. Realizing the economic impact of sea turtle season on the island, what are your thoughts on the funding and support of the Sea Turtle Protection Program?
Our turtles are one of our assets and resources. And one of the problems that we're having is the rolling stones and stuff that are preventing our turtles from coming up here and hatching. We've got a very comprehensive program that has to be considered to protect our turtles and get the money to pay for it. And one of the reasons that I would like to see us start cooperating more with other areas. I believe that the natural resources and the environments benefit everyone, not just the local residents of Oak Island, but everyone. And I think we should start looking for funding and grants from those nonprofits that are willing to share the interests that we have in preservation of our beaches. But we've got to do more to protect those, keep those rocks off the beach.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scott? Realizing the economic impact of sea turtle season on the island, what are your thoughts on funding and support of the Sea Turtle Protection Program?
I'm a hunter and fisherman and a wildlife conservationist, and I love the sea turtles. I think they're great, and I think the people that watch after these sea turtles, I think you're great too, and I appreciate everything you do for the turtles. And thank goodness for the turtles, because several years ago, we would have not had the beach renourishment that we have now. It was because of our sea turtles. They are very important creatures, and I would support any means through contributions, through grants, through anything else to protect our turtles.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, realizing the economic impact of sea turtle season on the island, what are your thoughts on the funding and support of the Sea Turtle Protection Program?
Well, the truth of the matter is we have one of the best turtle protection programs on the whole East Coast here on Oak Island, and it's all done by volunteers, by people like you. It's done very effectively, very professionally, and very efficiently. As far as an economic impact, if you've ever been out on the beach at night and watched a turtle nest hatch, you know that the less people you have around, the better it is, the less confusion you have. But it is something really to see. So I'm not really sure how it can have an economic impact on our beach. But I would just like to say this. I love turtles. I love animals. I love any kind of wildlife, and anything we can do to protect them, I think we should. I think one of the big issues as far as turtle protection goes today is gill nets. And that's one nobody's wanting to do anything about.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scott, I'm going to ask you for the first response to the next question. What are your thoughts regarding the legality of canopies on the beach?
You know, I think that people deserve to use canopies. You know, we have so many young kids and older people, and the sun is not kind to us at all. I think that we should allow canopies on the beach, but I also think that, you know, between the hours of sunrise and sunset, and I think it should be enforced. I think at nighttime they should be removed, and that I don't think that really is such a great burden on anybody to pick their stuff up and move it. And then also there's a lot of people that don't like squatters that leave their stuff up on the beach where you can't get to it because they've left it there and they've staked out some type of claim to that property. So it gives everybody a little more of a fair chance to remove them in the evening.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, What are your thoughts regarding the legality of canopies on the beach?
Legalities, I'm not sure where we stand with that. I do know that the sitting council has never discussed not allowing canopies to be used on the beach. That may come as a surprise to you, but we never discussed it. It was discussed in another meeting, but not with council, and it got in the newspaper, and that's how it got blown out of proportion. We just passed an ordinance that will allow the canopies to be used on the beach. They'll have to be removed at sunset, I think is the time, and they can't go on before 6:30 or 7 o'clock a.m. And as long as they're managed that way, the only problem with that is enforcement, and that's going to be another issue we're going to have to deal with, but we're looking at that. And we're going to come up with a way to enforce it. Hopefully, we're going to have a group of volunteers that are going to help us do that. Some of you can sign up for that, okay?
Mr. Vickers, what are your thoughts regarding the legality of canopies on the beach?
The whole issue of canopies, holes, and poles is one of attendance. It's not that anyone doesn't want any holes, poles, or canopies or anything out on the beach. We're all entitled to do that, and we're all welcome to enjoy the beach and the sand in the way that we can. It's just a matter of attendance. When you're not there looking after your property and your area that you have designated on the beach, then you need to clear it off and let somebody else use it. I don't think that anybody should be leaving it after they're not there to attend it, period. Simple.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, I ask for your response to the next question first, sir.
I just got through.
I'm just going by the order. Mr. Medlin, what ideas do you have to address the number of rundown and abandoned properties on Oak Island? Should minimum housing standards be put in place for owners to maintain their properties?
Good question, and I was kind of hoping you'd ask us that one.
Thank you. I appreciate your feedback.
We have a minimum housing ordinance right now, but there are no teeth in it. Our attorney is drafting a new ordinance. Our attorney and our code enforcement people are drafting a new ordinance for us to look at and approve. That'll put some teeth into our ordinance where we can actually physically go in and do what needs to be done to bring it up to or destroy it, one of the two. I don't know whether you know this or not, but there are state laws that govern that tells you that there's some things you can do and you can't do. And I can't come tear your house down because you're not keeping your grass cut or because your roof leaks. So there's a process that we're going to have to go through. We're getting that in place. That's one of the things we're working on. And I think if you look around, you'll have to agree that there has been a lot of improvement made on Oak Island in the last year or two in the way it looks and places being cleaned up. You agree? Thank you.
Mr. Scott, what ideas do you have to address the number of rundown and abandoned properties on Oak Island? And should minimum housing standards be put in place for owners to maintain their properties?
Well, absolutely, we should have minimum housing standards. And when you talk about minimum, you're talking bare bones. There are, unfortunately, a lot of places, and I've heard a lot of people talk about, and I've seen some places that were pretty disturbing. So I think maybe we need, like Mr. Medlin said, a little more teeth into some of our ordinances and enforcement. And let's get something going, and let's make our island clean, beautiful, and at least a minimum standard on all of our housing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vickers, resident wants to know, what ideas do you have to address the number of rundown and abandoned properties on Oak Island? Should minimum housing standards be put in place for owners to maintain their properties?
A couple of points on that. Number one is, like the federal government, we have laws coming out the yazoo, but they're not getting enforced. We need to have an active involvement of our village or town staff. But there's something else, and that is something that I favor and have seen in a lot of areas, and that is community identity And one of the things that you do in that is establish an area and establish a standard for the appearance of that area, but it's designated by the residents of that area. Just like you have business districts that are identified, and you've seen them when you've driven around with signs that say this is the Opon Business District, this is Worms and Coffee, this is whatever it is. But we have identifiable districts, and you can have the residents of that district agree to the standards such that you can have different standards of appearance within the district, the designated districts, and those can be enforced.
I'm going to ask you to stay there, Mr. Vickers, if you would, please.
Yes, sir.
To be the first responder to the next question. Name one specific action you plan to sponsor that would set you apart from others running for this office.
My strength is in visioning. I want to first off invite everyone, no matter what your political leaning, no matter what your side of the street you're on or side of the island you're on, I want to invite volunteers to come together and work towards establishing a vision for what we ought to be. Establish a vision for areas, establish a vision for education, for the cultural activities that take place here. That's what I did in Fayetteville, establish those visions, and in doing that, we will identify problem areas and success areas. With the establishment of a vision, we then can come up with plans to work towards it. Right now, we're just sort of hodgepodge. We've got to have a consistent future vision, and I want that vision to be established from volunteers from the community. We have people here that know a heck of a lot more than any one of us on council.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, name one specific action you plan to sponsor if reelected that would set you apart from the others running for this office.
Well, I'd like to name two, really, and I've already mentioned one of them to you. To pursue effective economic development for our area. And I can't really describe what all that looks like right now. But anything that we can do in our area to create more revenue for the island as far as is bringing businesses to the area. And then the other thing that I'm going to focus on if I'm elected for the next 4 years is our beach. There are areas of our beach right now that are in really bad shape, and we don't have the money to fix it. We should have been putting back money for the last 7 or 8 years. If we had not drained our accommodation tax fund the way we have over the last 8 years, there would be several $1 million in there to use on our beaches. But it was spent on everything. I'm going to focus on that for the next 4 years if I'm elected. I promise you that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scott, name one specific action you plan to sponsor if elected that would set you apart from the others running for this office.
I don't want to be simple or simplistic, but one thing I would like to see is our white, brown goods and trash pickup started again. It has gotten a little bit better, but when that stuff sits out there on the street, it just makes our whole town look terrible. And out of a $30 million budget, I remember when this particular item was taken out, I think it was like $98,000 a year or some figure like that. It was very low. I would like to see that started back.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vickers, I'm going to ask you to respond first to the next question, if I may. How do you feel about Brunswick County being placed in the Myrtle Beach MPO as opposed to Wilmington? And if elected, what can you do about it?
Congressman McIntyre said there was nothing he could do about it. Let me just elaborate on the metropolitan planning, the tax stuff. I served on the Transportation Advisory Committee for 5 years. Those areas and the designation are associated with the traffic counts of where the people in Brunswick County go to be employed. They don't go to Wilmington to be employed. The majority of the people in Brunswick County go to Myrtle Beach to be employed. That's the reason. Around here we don't, but that's the reason. That's the rationale of the government. That's why they set it up the way they set it up. And I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. I think we have more in common and more with New Hanover County, with the Wilmington metropolitan statistical area than we do with Myrtle Beach. But that's how they came up with the designation.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, how do you feel about Brunswick County being placed in the Myrtle Beach MPO as opposed to Wilmington? And if reelected, what can you do about it?
How do I feel about it? I don't like it. I don't understand why it was done. It didn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense. And what are we going to do about it as a council? We have already sent a resolution to the powers that be, to let them know our dissatisfaction. And we will go to whatever means we have to get it changed. Can we get it changed? I can't guarantee you that we can, but I'll promise you one thing. When the dust settles, they're going to know where Oak Island is. They're going to know us.
Mr. Medlin, thank you. Mr. Scott, how do you feel about Brunswick County being placed in the Myrtle Beach MPO as opposed to Wilmington? And if elected, what can you do about it?
You know, I've read about this, and I'll be completely honest. I don't understand all there is to know about this. It's like Mr. Medlin said, it doesn't make sense. I think we need to lobby and continue to bring us in line with Wilmington. I think that's who we are more aligned with, and I think we should fight the good fight, and let's try to get it done.
Mr. Scott, I'm going to ask you to stay there to respond to the next question first, sir. Sent in by a resident. This person wants to know, what can or will you do if elected about the speeding issues on East Oak Island Drive and the side streets?
You know, we have a residential speed limit of 25 miles an hour on our side streets, and I think we could probably do with a little more enforcement of that. Enforcement's the key, and you know we don't want to be Gestapo. And as a former policeman, I can tell you that the police officers are the first government official that anybody, the tourist or anybody else, meets. And I think there's got to be some common sense and judgment used in the issue of speeding. However, on our residential side streets, I think that the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit should be strictly enforced.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vickers, the resident wants to know, what can or will you do if elected about the speeding issues on East Oak Island Drive and on the side streets?
Side streets generally take care of themselves. I don't think you can go more than 25 miles an hour on the side streets with all the depressions and bumps and stuff. It's dangerous out there, and the problem that we have are that with our visitors and people crossing from one side of the street to the other. It's really dangerous. And of course, with the sidewalks, you got sidewalks going out, what used to be Long Beach, out to there, and then to go over to Yopon, you have to go across the street. So pedestrians are being forced to cross the street. We need law enforcement active on there, but I can't say that that we're going to change the streets or put up stoplights. I don't see that going down. But enforcement and visibility of police is the biggest thing, I think, more so than out there with a radar gun.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, resident would like to know what you can and will do if reelected about the speeding issues on East Oak Island Drive and on the side streets.
What can I do and what will I do? I can continue to talk with our police chief and with our town manager when I get complaints, when I hear complaints, and I can even voice my own complaints to them. And I do that on a regular basis. I will stop those on my street that speed and read the speed limit signs to them. I live on a side street, and I know sometimes there are cars. I live on the last street out off the beach, and sometimes 50, 55 miles an hour up my street. So, and it's dangerous. There are children in those streets. And I will do that. I will stop them and ask them if they can read or read the sign to them. I think our police department has a difficult task here because they can't be everywhere. They can't be at all places at one time. But I think much heavier hand on enforcement needs to be done. And people really, when they're caught speeding, they need to be punished to the fullest extent of the law and made an example out of.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medlin, I'd like to get your response to the next question, if I may. Would you be in favor of allowing high-rise condos or commercial hotels higher than 40 feet in Oak Island as a way of bringing new revenue into the community?
Well, I heard that question earlier, and I was thinking I would have said yes, because our height limit's 41 feet, so you said 40 feet, so I
Okay.
guess.
I said higher than
technically-
40 feet.
Technically, it could have been another foot. There would be an outcry from the citizens on this island if that was attempted. I believe that. Good, solid economic development can occur within the parameters of our height limits. Trust me. I have talked with 2 major developers from Raleigh that build nothing but hotels, and they both say they can build a hotel here on Oak Island if there's a parcel of land that's zoned that's large enough. Off the mainland, on the other side of the bridge, yes, I would be in favor of it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scott, would you be in favor of allowing high-rise condos or commercial hotels higher than 40 feet in Oak Island as a way of bringing new revenue to the community?
Absolutely not. I am not in favor of that. And as I said before, the height limitations is the glue that holds us together. It holds us together as a nice residential neighborhood. And how many people have heard other people say, you know, we just love Oak Island because it's not like Myrtle Beach. It's not commercialized. And that's what we've got going. This is just, like I said, a rare place to live. It's a great place to live. And if anything, I try to strengthen those laws because I don't think that it helps the people and the property owners here on the island.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vickers, would you be in favor of allowing high-rise condos or commercial hotels higher than 40 feet in Oak Island as a way of bringing new revenue into the community?
Not on the island. We came here because we turned down places and looked up and down the coast. There's just no way in the world that I wanted to live on someplace that had a big building blocking my view of the ocean or blocking the breeze. However, it's a different story over on 211 and Midway and those areas. There we can accommodate it. And we need those buildings over there. We need to have more people over there paying our bills.
Thank you, sir. Candidates, we have come to the end of the questions for this forum. We do, again, though, have an order for our closing statements. Each one of the candidates will get 2 minutes for a closing statement, or no longer than 2 minutes. For our first closing statement this evening, we bring to the podium candidate Loman Scott. Mr. Scott.
Well, thank you all for coming once again. And I would just like to tell you once again that I have been here, a property owner or a resident for 34 years. I know the history of this island. I have been on several of the boards and commissions here. I have prepared myself for this. I actually was not planning on running for council, but at the last minute I decided, you know, if as much grief as I gave the council in the past years, by golly, you know, I ought to be able to take a little of it. So I'm putting myself out there, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Scott, thank you. Next, for his closing statement of no more than 2 minutes, candidate Darrell Vickers. Mr. Vickers.
Proverbs 29:18 says that where there is no vision, the people will perish. Oak Island needs to bring together volunteers to participate in establishing a vision and not continue to dwell upon our current problems and how we got there. We need to look down the road to help the community, establish a vision, and work towards a better tomorrow. We cannot wait until the next catastrophe comes. We must prepare for the future. My candidacy is about good leadership, identifying the problems, fixing them, and moving forward. My focus is upon the future, establishing a vision for our community, and then plotting a course that will take us there. My communication skills and my ability to analyze all issues will create winning results. That's my strength. Anybody can tell you where we've been, but few can get you to where you want to go. I'm a leader that can get you where you need to go. Yogi Berra said, "The future ain't what it used to be. The people who are supporting me know that we cannot go back and we cannot continue to do what we've always done, lest we get what we always got. We can, however, elect wise leaders who listen to all sides of every issue, analyze the data, and make decisions that will make our future the best that we can. That's why people are supporting me, not for reasons of nostalgia, but for the leadership forward that I offer. We are working together and moving forward. Thank you for your vote. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Vickers, thank you. For our final closing statement this evening of no more than 2 minutes, we bring candidate Jim Medlin. Mr. Medlin.
A very wise person said to me not long ago, a person I consider to be very wise, if you don't understand the problem, then you can't fix it. Sometimes you have to look back to understand how you got where you are, and that leads you to a solution. The problems that we faced in the last, 4 years that I've been on council have not been of our making, for the most part. We have had to deal with a lot of issues that were put in place before we got there. I was on council 2 years, and I saw a lot of things done that I knew were going to be difficult to deal with down the road. I saw the street cut-throughs that were being done and that they were being done improperly. I knew they were being done improperly, and I blew the whistle, and I tried to get something done about it, but nothing was done. So guess where we are today? We're in the process now of trying to find a way to go back and repair all of those cut-throughs that were done before we can even pave the streets. Thank the Lord that we've got some contractors that did the work some of them have already said they're willing to come back and do their part. I just wanted to tell you that because I think it's necessary to understand that it hadn't been all wine, cheese, and roses. It's been hard. It's been difficult. But I've tried to filter everything I've done, every vote I've made through the filter of what's best for the people of Oak Island, you as the citizens. Have I had a good record? I think I have. I think my record stands for itself. Have I made some mistakes? I sure have. You probably know what they are better than I do. But I promise you this, if I'm reelected, I will do my best to represent you as the people of Oak Island as well as I have in the last 4 years. Oak Island is a beautiful place. I love living here, and I want to work to keep it that way. Timed that just right.
Mr. Jim Medlin, Mr. Darrell Vickers, Mr. Loman Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a round of applause, if you would, please. And that will end our forum here from Oak Island this evening. Once again, thank you to all the candidates who took the time to be here. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for helping us put this together. And once again, thank you to the town of Oak Island for hosting us. This forum and the first forum of the mayoral candidates will be on WECT.com all the way up and through Election Day, November the 5th. I'm John Evans. Thanks so much for watching, and good night.